Hi, I'm Master Sergeant Hawkins. I'm the Career Assistance Advisor here at Beale Air Force Base. I'm a part of the Top 3 Professional Development Committee, so thank you for coming to our telePD series that we have every Friday at 10 o'clock. This week, we're going to be showcasing what is Juneteenth, and it's being brought to you by the African American Heritage Council. Today with me in the iLab over at Beale Air Force Base, I have Staff Sergeant Ashley Jasmine. She is the president of the African American Heritage Council, and she's going to take it away for us.
Hello, everyone. First, we want to say thank you to the Top 3 for allowing us to let you guys know about Juneteenth. We have a special guest with us today, Ms. Chief Warrant Officer for retired Petrice McKey-Reese. She is the first Black Chief Warrant Officer for her MOS in the Army. And she was in for 30 years before she retired. She retired out of Wiesbaden. Her bio was attached to the advertisement. So guys, please go take a look at the advertisement to look at all the wonderful things that she's done during her career. She's going to give us the history of Juneteenth. So I pass it over to Miss CW4, retired Petrice McKey-Reese.
Thank you, Sergeant Jasmine, and good morning to everyone. And first, I just want to thank the African American Heritage Council for asking me to do this. It's truly an honor to be here with you all this morning. So I'm going to get started. And I just want to try to enlighten a little bit on what is Juneteenth and why we celebrate Juneteenth. And just to let you all know, it started with the African American race, but today everyone celebrates it. So you don't have to be African American to celebrate Juneteenth. So what is Juneteenth? And it's on the slide. I'm not going to read it for you. You can read it for yourselves. But there are just a few things that I do want to highlight that's on the slide. It originally started in Texas on June 19th in 1866. And that's why the date June 19th is so special. And it's always celebrated on June 19th. And it marks the first anniversary of the day that African Americans first learned of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was more than 2 years after it was initially issued. Can I go on to the next slide? Hopefully everyone's had a chance to read that. If I move too fast, someone please just let me know and I can slow down. Didn't Abraham Lincoln free the slave? Yes and no. And why do we say that? We say that because he signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. And what does it say? It said, I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are and henceforth shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons. But we just read earlier that slaves weren't free to 1866. So they didn't find out for 2 years later. Why was that? Further, it goes on to say, unfortunately, the proclamation only applied to states that had seceded from the Union, and it could not be enforced everywhere until the Civil War ended in 1865. Slavery wasn't abolished all over America until the 13th Amendment, which was ratified on December 6, 1865. And then it talks about communication. So if we know today, if you think back years ago, we didn't have email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the technology that we have today, especially with computers. So could you imagine getting the word back then that the slaves were free and the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed and, getting the word around. So how do you think they had to travel, the message had to travel? So, of course, it took a long time for the message to get through. And even when it got through, people weren't listening to it. Everybody was just kind of doing what they want to do. Even today, sometimes when we get messages across, people don't want to hear. Bills get passed and legislation gets passed, and people still don't want to adhere to it. Everybody just kind of want to do what they want to do. So that's what happened then. It took a while for the word to get across to everyone. And even then, some people was like, I don't care. I'm still going to own the slaves. So it doesn't apply to me. And that's kind of what happened. So it goes on to tell you that other factors preventing the news from reaching all who were enslaved, like messengers being killed, slave owners intentionally withholding the information. Union soldiers were finally able to get the message across from the commander of the Confederate States Army, General Robert E. Lee, surrendered to President Ulysses S. Grant on April 9, 1865. The following year, the now free slaves celebrated their freedom on June 19th in Galveston, and Juneteenth spread across the country and has been celebrated ever since. Is Juneteenth a national holiday? It's not. There are talks now about making it a national holiday, but currently it's not a national holiday. It started in Texas celebrating in 1980. A number of other states declared it a state holiday and then a day of observance. Every state has different legislation, how it's going to be celebrated, and when they pass that legislation for it to be celebrated in the years. And we'll talk about that and the importance of that a little bit later. But it may or may not become a holiday. We just have to wait and see what happens. So, how is Juneteenth celebrated? Depends on where you at. Normally it starts with excuse me, someone had a question? Okay. It starts with prayer and religious services, speeches, educational events, family gatherings, picnics, festivals with food, music, dancing. The day is also celebrated outside the United States and is used to recognize the end of slavery as well as to celebrate African American culture and achievements. Along with that, there's special food that is normally served with Juneteenth. Watermelon and red soda water are the oldest traditions of the food that are served. In Texas, barbecue is commonly served along with collard greens and sweet potatoes. The traditional red soda water symbolizes the blood lost during the struggle for emancipation. So that's why you'll see at most every Juneteenth day, there's red soda water out there. And it's just so that people don't forget. I always tell my sons when they were growing up, and I tell my grandkids all the time, and for those soldiers that used to work for me, I would always say you have to know where you came from in order to know where you're going. So if you don't know your history, you really can't know where you're going. Everybody came from somewhere, so you have to know your history in order to know where you're going. And it's important to keep those traditions alive. And that's why every branch of service celebrates their anniversary, because you have to know where you came from in order to move forward. You can't wipe away the history. You'll never progress if you try to just wipe it away. You always have to know where you came from in order to know where you're going. Okay, so moving on. Okay, something happened. Okay, I'm gonna pause here. Someone tried to they wanted to do something, and now it's doing something with the screen. Can you help me out, Sarah and Jasmine?
One second.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I got it. I guess somebody was trying to do something with the screen. Okay. So this is just a picture of a celebration of Juneteenth that was in Philadelphia. And this is just, as I said, everywhere you go, people celebrate different. So here in Philadelphia, they started with a parade to kick off their festivities one year. And as you can see, they're just having a good time. They normally wear African traditional colors, their African traditional garments. So most people just really come out and celebrate and have a good time. And as you can see, it's not just African Americans out having a good time. It's everyone coming together having a good time. How did the American Civil Rights Movement affect Juneteenth celebration? I'm going to give you a moment to just read that slide. Just a few key things I want to point out. In 1968, the Poor People's Campaign, which was originally led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they held the Juneteenth Solidarity Day. So this tells you that there were a lot of powerful people, even back in the day, that really tried to get Juneteenth up and moving and that were involved in it. And that had a lot to do with it. The interest in Juneteenth continued to increase in the following decades. And it talks about Texas being the first state to actually sponsor a Juneteenth celebration again. So just remember that there were a lot of things that Juneteenth affected, not only with just letting people know that the slaves were free, but it also affected the civil rights movement. What was the Poor People's Campaign? And I thought this was important just to mention because it talked about it with the Juneteenth celebration. And if you didn't know a lot about the Juneteenth, and you may not have even known what the Poor People's Campaign was about. So that's why I just wanted to give you a little bit of information on that. And in 1967, civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the staff of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference met and decided to launch a Poor People's Campaign to highlight and find solutions to many of the problems facing the country's poor. The campaign would lead up to a Poor People's March on the country's capital. Poor People's Campaign, also called Poor People's March, political campaign that culminated in a demonstration held in Washington, D.C. in 1968, in which participants demanded that the government formulate a plan to help redress the employment and housing problems of the poor throughout the United States. So as you can see, this wasn't a campaign that was just about African Americans. This was a campaign about the poor, regardless of whether you were purple, green, yellow, brown, black, or white. It did not matter. If you were poor, they were trying to help. And this is just a picture of where they were marching. And then again, you can see it's just not one race. It's everybody coming together for a good cause, a common cause to help everyone. regardless of who you are. What does the Juneteenth flag symbolize? Ben Hath, who created the flag in 1997, did the flag based off of the state of Texas flag because that's what Juneteenth was originally became the first holiday, or not, I shouldn't say holiday, but it was first celebrated at. So that's why the flag is the way it is. And this is what the flag looks like. So the off of their website, it tells you that the flag was redesigned. It was later revised in 2000 to date back to what kind of the state of Texas flag looks like. It's red, white, and blue, since those are the colors of the American flag, and to declare that American slaves, as well as their descendants, are all Americans. The star represents the birthplace of the holiday, Galveston, Texas, since Texas has a star in its own flag. And graph says that the bursting star that surrounds it symbolizes a new freedom, a new people, a new star. So it was kind of a way of saying, here's a fresh new start. What states celebrate Juneteenth? And I put the dates on each state, and I thought the dates were important because some states held out to relay the news because they were still Confederate states. And the four main states that held out were Louisiana, Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas. And it's surprising because Texas was what? The first state that made it a holiday. But they were one of the main states that held out and didn't want to free the slaves. But they eventually end up being the first state to make it a holiday. And as you can see from the date, once they started, it took how many years for another state to even come on board. So people were celebrating, but they weren't getting much support from their states. But once they started, the states finally came on board. And as you can see from the dates, they kind of came right behind each other in unison. But all 50 states aren't represented. You still have 4 states out there that still haven't declared it a holiday within their state. But if it becomes a national holiday, then they'll have no choice. So I thought the dates were very important that you all actually know what states there were in the dates. And do I have any questions? Did I go over anything too fast? Is there anything that I can try to clarify?
Hi, this is Sean, currently deployed. I was curious, are there any other symbolic narratives or aspects about Juneteenth? You talked about the red soda and the flag. What about music or poems or, other symbolic things that are attached to Juneteenth?
Other than the colors, the music is just whatever the organizer of the event wants to play. I know here, I'm currently in the state of Oklahoma. I know Al Sharpton will be here this weekend, so some people have famous artists come in and they sing. We're doing a lot of art displays, so it just depends on your state and the organizer for that state, but there's not like a list of specific music you have to play. Of course, they always have the red soda water and watermelon normally. But a lot of soul food is definitely always out there, and it just depends on what part of the world you're in for soul food. Because soul food varies by the part of the world you're in as well. Down south, I'm from Louisiana originally, so, you know, for soul food for us, we definitely like to do the gumbo and the red beans and rice and fried fish and collard greens and those type of things. So it also varies by where you live at, but there's not like a particular listing of you have to play this kind of music or you have to do this. No. And please be safe.
Thank you. And just have one more question. With you being in Oklahoma, does the narrative, I guess, of the state, so Oklahoma being the home for Black Wall Street, does that come up in discussion in Oklahoma?
I've only been here about 5 years. As I said, I'm originally from Louisiana, and I retired here, and I retired out of Wiesbaden, Germany. So, believe it or not, before I moved here, you didn't hear a whole lot about Black Wall Street. But once you get inside of the state, there is a lot that goes on and that is done. They currently have a program going on now to revive Black Wall Street and bring it back. So there's a lot being done to revive that area and save the area and bring it back. But there wasn't going to be a Juneteenth celebration because of the COVID, but then they decided to do one. I have mixed feelings about it because our numbers are still increasing. So if people be safe, then we'll be okay. But again, the numbers are still increasing, and you're always taking a risk. And my faith is strong, but I also believe God gives us common sense. So, you know, sometimes you have to ensure that you're truly being safe when you're doing things, and just scale some things back when you need to. Any other questions?
I have a question, ma'am.
Yes.
So the first time that I actually heard about Juneteenth was when I was in college. Do you think that there's any particular reason that this isn't being like more openly talked about within public schools? And I went to a predominantly African American high school, and I never heard about it until I went on to college.
I think it just, and this is just Petrice's personal opinion, I just think it's one of those things that's not in the curriculum that's talked about and taught like a lot of African American history. I will tell you, I was born in 1965. My high school was trying to be integrated when I was in high school, and I graduated high school. I'm going to tell my age in 1983. And when I was in high school, they were trying to integrate my high school. But as I said, I grew up in Louisiana in a predominantly African-American neighborhood. And they were trying to integrate my high school. And I felt sorry for the children that they bussed in because it was reversed. You know, versus them busting some of us out, they bust people in, and those children had a really hard time just adapting to what we were used to living with. It was the norm for us, but I just don't think the curriculum is structured for African American history to be taught, and teachers can only teach what they're allowed to teach under the curriculum. So if it's not important to the school system and they don't feel like everyone needs to know, then it's not going to be on the curriculum. And that's why a lot of teachers can't teach it. It's just not important. And that's why you have to have a village that teaches those type of things to your family and your family's families in order to get it out there.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Patrice, Sergeant Hawkins here. We have a question in the chat for you.
Okay.
Ma'am, can you tell us more about your military career?
Sure. I started off as what was considered, I was a parachute rigger my entire military career. When I started off as a 43 Echo. We later switched to 92 Romeo. I was an E6 promotable I was an E6 when I applied to the Warrant Officer Corps. Made E6 or E7 while I was in the Warrant Officer Candidate School, decided to stay in school, went on and became a warrant officer, spent the next 20 years as a warrant officer, had a warrant officer that I worked for, CW4 retired, Robert Ford, that saw something in me as a little PFC and just said, when you decide to drop your warrant packet, come and find me. So when I made E6 in my field at the time, and still today, you have to be an E6 to apply to go to warrant officer school. So I found him years later. He wrote me a letter. CW4 retired David Blacker was instrumental in helping me get my packet together. But I had great NCOs. Some first class retired Marshall Ford, just a slew of people, company commander, now retired Colonel Gloria Blake, just a slew of people that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself and encouraged me. When I got selected, there were 2 other female warrants in my MOS, and it was me and another female, Trish Kyle. We went to school together, and we became the 3rd and 4th female. I didn't realize the impact and the position God placed me in when I became the first African-American female to become a rigger warrant. Sometimes God uses you and you don't realize how he's using you at that moment. And it wasn't until years later the impact that I realized that I had on not only my field but the Army. But I believe that I missed the mark in my calling of what God wanted me to do. I don't think I did not only African-American females, but other females a good justice. I know I mentored. That's how I met Sergeant Jasmine. She wasn't even, we were at the same duty station, but I know I mentored soldiers in general, but I know I helped female soldiers any way I could, where they were airmen, regardless of the branch of service. But I just think letting people know that you can make it regardless. I think I kind of missed the mark on what God wanted me to do, but I know I had a successful career. And it was all by the grace of God that I was able to do a lot of what I did. And I would tell people, if you listen to those above you, even when times get difficult, if you have leadership that is always nice to you, you got the wrong leadership. Because the leadership that's going to get in you when you need to be gotten into and help you out, that's the leadership that you want. Because they're going to tell you when you're wrong and they're going to praise you when you're right. That's the leadership that you need. And I think that's what I had in my career. I was just put in the right place at the right time. And God ensured that I was taken care of. So I hope I answered your question. Are there any other questions or?
Yes, ma'am. I had a question.
Yes.
Based on your professional opinion, because of the recent events like the protests and the riots, how do you think it'll impact Juneteenth? Will it be able to be pushed more, you think?
I don't think the recent events should push specifically Juneteenth. I think the recent events need to push what's going on in the world, period. I think God is trying to talk to us, and we're not listening well as a people. And as a people, we need to listen, and we need to come together as a people and do what's right. Sometimes it's hard to be that lone person that says, they're saying stuff that's not right, and I don't like it, but I'm going to just leave out the break room because I know they're saying things that are not right, instead of just standing up and saying something. Sometimes you need to be the one that say, hey, you need to not say that. And because that's not right. And I think that's where we're at now. We see things sometimes and we just don't say anything. You know, if you look at a lot of the events that have happened recently, people could have prevented them and stopped them, and they just stood by and watched. And I think that's where we're at. So it's not just about being Juneteenth. It's about us as a people standing up and doing the right thing. And then
Thank you.
You're welcome. I saw someone type a message saying, how do we educate others on Juneteenth? I think the way you do it is use the organizations that's on your installation, use your chain of command. You know, if nothing's going on in your unit and you know Juneteenth is coming up and you want to have a celebration, get with your organization and put together. Anyone can put together Juneteenth celebration or briefing. You know, there's always African American councils or other organizations that are doing things. I mean, even your EO office can assist you with putting together Juneteenth celebration and help educate. So anyone can help educate anybody on Juneteenth.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
So, you were saying that you feel if we don't learn from our history, then we can't move forward. And I'm wondering what you're thinking about with the current climate. A lot of things that were associated with like slavery or Jim Crow or the oppression of minorities, people of color, now they're being taken down. Do you feel that that's an appropriate action? Because if we don't remember our history, then more than likely, you know, the saying goes, if you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So how do you feel about those things being taken down?
I think anything that does not represent everyone should not be there. You know, when in a public place, what we do on our own personal private property is one thing. But I'm not saying, when I say you have to learn from your history, you in order to move forward, you do. So if you know that every time you go to a public library, there's something out front that hurts one individual race, why would you want it in front of a public library? That just is like pouring salt in an open wound. Because that public library is there for everybody. So don't put something up that's going to hurt one race or one individual. But that's just Petrice speaking. You know, I believe, and that's my personal opinion, we need to come together as a people and do things in love and in kindness towards all of us. So if we can't help each other and love on each other, then something is wrong with us. You know, God tells us all the time, you need to love your neighbor, you need to love your brother, you need to love your sister. So how can we do that if we're steady doing things that are hurting each other? We shouldn't be hurting each other. We should be helping and loving each other.
I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm trying to see, someone has something in the chat. Ooh, I missed quite a few questions in the chat. Yes, within the military community, the celebrations can definitely represent many communities. That is a true statement. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation. Is there any other questions or anything I can do to try to clarify anything else?
Well, since we don't have any more questions, ma'am, I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing all of this history with us, taking time out of your day to, help us all out and learn some things today. We really appreciate it. Again, thank the top three for letting us have this platform today. We really appreciate that. If you're here at Bill with us, come on out to the barbecue we're having at 11 o'clock at the Valley Chapel. So we're celebrating Juneteenth here. We will have red soda. So come on out and enjoy some barbecue with us. Again, Petrice, thank you so much. We really do appreciate this.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate you all for giving me the opportunity.
Yes. Sir Hawkins, thank you.
Yep, thank you for joining us. And with that, we'll close our telePD for this week, and we will see you next week.
Happy Juneteenth, everybody.
Have a good barbecue. Enjoy your celebration. Thank you once again.
Thank you.